Welcome on Easy Learning. Today I am going to start a new chapter, The Rule of the Road, written by A.G. Gardner. Before explaining this chapter, I will read about Alfred George Gardner, and then I will read the chapter, and then I will explain this chapter in different parts of the video. So without wasting the time, I am going to read the chapter The Rule of the Road, written by A.G. Gardner. Alfred George Gardner, born in 1865 and died in 1946, widely known under his pen name of Alpha of the Plough, was one of the most delightful essayists of modern times. He was the editor of the Daily News from 1902 to 1921. His essays combine ideas and emotions with beauty of form and remind us of pleasant things, sunshine and mirth, laughter and mirth. His collections of essays include Pebbles on the Shore, Windfalls and Many Furrows. In his essays, he points out in an easy and thought-provoking manner what constitutes true liberty. The Rule of the Road. A stout old lady was walking with her basket down the middle of a street in Petrograd, to the great confusion of the traffic and with no small peril to herself. It was pointed out to her that the pavement was the place for foot passengers, but she replied, "I am going to walk where I like. We've got liberty now." It did not occur to the dear old lady that if liberty entitled the foot passenger to walk down the middle of the road, it also entitled the cab driver to drive on the pavement, and that the end of such liberty would be universal chaos. Everybody would be getting in everybody else's way, and nobody would get anywhere. Individual liberty would have become social anarchy. There is a danger of the world getting liberty drunk in these days, like the old lady with the basket, and it is just as well to remind ourselves of what the rule of the road means. It means that in order that the liberties of all may be preserved, the liberties of everybody must be curtailed. When the policeman, say, at Piccadilly Circus steps into the middle of the road and puts out his hand, he is the symbol not of tyranny but of liberty. You may think so. You may, being in a hurry and seeing your motor car stopped by this insolence of office, feel that your liberty has been violated. How dare this fellow interfere with your free use of the public highway than if you are a reasonable person? You will reflect that if he did not interfere with you, he would interfere with no one, and the result would be you would never cross Piccadilly Circus at all. You have admitted to a curtailment of private liberty in order that you may enjoy a social order which makes your liberty a reality. Liberty is not a personal affair only, but a social contract. It is an adjustment of interests in matters which do not touch anybody else's liberty, of course. I may be as free as I like. If I choose to go down the Strand in a dressing gown with long hair and bare feet, who shall say me nay? You have liberty to laugh at me, but I have the liberty to be indifferent to you. And if I have fancy for denying my hair, or waxing my moustache, which heaven forbid, or wearing a tall hat, a frock coat and sandals, or going to bed late or getting up early, I shall follow my fancy and ask no man's permission. In all these and 1,000 other details, you and I please ourselves and ask no one's leave. We have a whole kingdom in which we rule alone, can do what we choose, be wise or ridiculous, harshly or easy, conventional or odd. But directly we step out of that kingdom, our personal liberty of action is restricted by other people's liberty. I might like to practice on the trombone from midnight till 3 in the morning. If I went on to the top of heavily to do it, I could please myself. But if I do it out in the streets, the neighbors will remind me that my liberty to blow the trombone must interfere with their liberty to sleep in quiet. There are a lot of people in the world, and I have to accommodate my liberty to their liberties. We are all liable to forget this, and unfortunately, we are much more conscious of the imperfections of others in this respect than of our own. I got into railway carriage at a country station the other morning and settled down for what the schoolboys could call an hour's thought at Blue Book. I was not reading for pleasure. The truth is that I never do read blue books for pleasure. I read them for the very humble purpose of turning an honest penny out of them. Now, if you are reading a book for pleasure, it doesn't matter what is going on around you. But when you are reading a thing as a task, you need reasonable quiet. And that is what I didn't get. For at the next station in came a couple of men, one of whom talked to his friend for the rest of the journey in a loud and pompous voice. As I wrestled with clauses and sections, his voice rose like a gale, and his family history, the deeds of his sons in war, and his criticism of the generals and the politicians, submerged my poor attempts to hang on to my job. I shut up the blue book, looked out of the window, and listened warily while the voice thundered on with themes like these. Now what the French ought to have done, the mistake the Germans made, if only Asquith had, the sort of stuff. I had it all before. Oh, so often. It was like a barrel organ groaning out some uninteresting song of long ago. If I had asked him to be good enough to talk in a lower tone, I dare to say he would have thought I was a very rude fellow. It did not occur to him that anybody could have anything better to do than to listen to him, and I have no doubt he left the carriage convinced that everybody in it had, thanks to him, had a very illuminating journey. A reasonable consideration for the rights or feelings of others is the foundation of social conduct. I believe that the rights of small people and quiet people are as important to preserve as the rights of small nationalities. When I hear the aggressive blowing horn, which some motorists deliberately use, I confess that I feel something boiling up in me, which is very like what I felt when Germany came trampling like a bully over Belgium. By what right, my dear sir, do you go along our highway uttering this hideous curse on all who impede your path? Cannot you announce your coming like a gentleman? Cannot you take your turn? And there is the more harmless person who has bought a very blatant gramophone and on Sunday afternoon sets the things going, opens the windows and fills the street with keep the home fires burning or some similar banality. What are the right limits of social behavior in a matter of this sort? Let us take the trombone as an illustration again. Hazlitt said that a man who wanted to learn that fearsome instrument was entitled to learn it in his house, even though he was a nuisance to his neighbors, but it was his business to make the nuisance as slight as possible. He must practice in the attic and shut the window. He had no right to sit in his front room, open the window, and blow his noise into his neighbor's ears with a maximum of violence. And so, with the gramophone. If you like the gramophone, you are entitled to have it. But you are interfering with the liberties of your neighbors if you don't do what you can to limit the noise to your own household. Your neighbors may not keep the home fires burning. They may prefer to have their Sunday afternoon undisturbed, and it is as great an impertinence for you willfully to trespass on their peace as it would be to go unasked into their gardens and trample their flower beds. I suppose the fact is that we can be neither complete anarchists nor complete socialists in this complex world, or rather, we must be a judicious mixture of both. We have both liberties to preserve, our individual liberty and our social liberty. It is in the small matters of conduct, in the observance of the rule of the road, that we pass judgment upon ourselves and declare that we are civilized or uncivilized. The great moments of heroism and sacrifice are rare. It is the little habits of commonplace intercourse that make up the great sum of life and sweeten or make bitter the journey. I hope my friend in the railway carriage will reflect on this, then he will not cease, I am sure, to explain to his neighbor where the French went wrong and where the Germans went ditto. But he will do it in a way that will permit me to read my blue book undisturbed. Now in the next parts of the video I will explain them.